So I was on the way home from Arby's with a mint chocolate shake. Zoned out for a sec and almost didn't notice his car. I tried just letting him through, but he insisted I go on ahead. Didn't think much of it and just continued on walking. He drove on ahead and parked his car near some apartments. He had on a black polo shirt, so I assumed he was just dropping something off for a job or something. As I kept walking, he approached me and offered me a $20 bill. I asked why, but couldn't understand what he said in response. I refused since I know what's best for me. However, that didn't deter him. He grabbed my waist and I stepped to the side. He then started pulling me towards his car. I bit his hand so he wouldn't silence me and made sure to scream as loud as possible to try and attract any bystanders if I could. He managed to get me into his car and just before he could close it, I stuck my foot through the door to keep it open. I then got out and made myself go limp since adding dead weight without warning creates sudden resistance and makes it harder for them to grasp you. Due to this quick thinking, I was able to get away unharmed. I quickly booked it and got on the phone with my mom once I was at a safe distance. I made sure to stay on the phone until I got back. After that, I'd taken some time to calm down and waited for the cops to get there to get my statement. The officer ended up praising my quick thinking, telling me that I'd luckily done everything right in this situation. Please, guys, take self-defense seriously. I've only ever had a week-long course, and just that alone had managed to save my life. I didn't remember too much from my self-defense course and only used the basic techniques that I'd remembered, which was making noise, dropping my weight, and checking behind me. Any other actions I'd taken were a result of logic and quick thinking. Chances are, if I'd gotten more self-defense training, it likely wouldn't have been as close of a call as it was. Also, never accept money from strangers. While there are good Samaritans, there's also people who don't have your best interest in mind. If you do think they have good intentions, make sure to double-check by asking why they're offering you money. If you don't get a good legitimate reason, then make sure you refuse. If you refuse and they still persist, then get away immediately. I currently live in an RV in my mom's driveway. My town is just larger than small, and it's relatively safe. Lots of rich people, doctors, live here so it's kept very nice and crime is relatively low. I never expected something to happen to me. But tonight I met a man and he was a reminder to me to always lock my door. Sometimes I forget to lock my door, even while sleeping, and it's never been a big deal to me because my town is generally safe. But I'll be locking my door now. It was 2 a.m., and I took my garage outside to the bin. When I turned around I noticed a figure in the dark walking towards me. I started to quickly walk away but he spoke to me. He was a short man probably in his 50s or 60s. I'm 23 AMD female. He started talking to me about my living in the RV and I took charge of the conversation to shut it down quickly. He told me what house he lives in and his name. He was being polite, but very creepy. I'm sure nearly every woman gets what I mean. That older man kind of creepy and too polite to you because you're a pretty young woman. He told me I should come by his house sometime and I'm like, yeah, sure. Maybe one day. Have a good night and I walked back to my RV and locked the door. I figured he'd have left, but he didn't. I don't have a curtain on my window right now, and I could hear him pacing outside my window and mumbling to himself. I was just hiding but I wanted to lock the door by my bed. It doesn't open at all anyway, but I decided to lock it regardless. I got up and looked outside and he was staring right at me. He was waving his hand at me to get my attention, walking right up to my window and acting so erratic. It was so different from the guy I just met. I locked my door and he watched me, and after that he left my window. I felt like he was still there. 5 or so minutes pass and then he's knocking at my RV door. I don't know if he tried to get in or not, It's just a flip handle so I can't hear it or anything. I just waited there for an hour before I grabbed a knife and ran into my mom's house. I'm definitely getting a taser and a gun. I think he'd been standing across the street watching me. There's no reason for him to have just been outside my RV at 2 a.m. I think he's been watching me too. People shouldn't really know that I live in the RV walking down the street. That's not something I take notice of. I've only even started to pay attention to RVs in driveways since I started living in one, and still I don't notice if people actually are living in them or not. Maybe I'm being naive. But it makes me wonder if he's been watching me, seeing that I live in the RV day after day. I don't go outside of my RV, I'm a homebody. So he'd have to have been staring into my RV to really even notice someone actually living in it. Terrifies me. I was so afraid of his intentions. He makes me realize that even though I'm in a safe town, I'm still a young, pretty woman. I'm a target on men's lists. I've been debating about whether to post this or not, but I've finally decided that it's been long enough for me to talk about this. This happened to me and my mom a few months ago, back in October. It happened in a very rural part of New Hampshire, like a side road on a side road type of neighborhood. It was pouring out, as it had been raining for pretty much the whole day. My mom had just gotten back from down the street in my sister's car, and I was on the couch in the living room when suddenly I heard the doorbell ring. Our front door has a big glass pane in the front, so we can look out from the inside, and someone can look in from the outside. Through this window pane, I see a man. I didn't get a great look at him, as I didn't have my long-distance glasses on. The man noticed that I had seen him, and waved as if trying to be friendly. For the rest of this post, I'll refer to him as Poncho Man. I got up, and thought about opening the door for Poncho Man, but relented. As I couldn't properly see who it was, I didn't want to let a stranger into the house. Instead, I went down the hall to my parents' bedroom, where my mom was getting ready for work. She asked what was up, and I explained to her that a man in a poncho was outside our door, and wanted to talk to us. She went as white as a ghost. Immediately, she stopped getting ready, closed and locked the bedroom door, and started checking the windows to make sure they were locked. I asked her what was going on. My mom explained that as she was driving home, she had seen the Poncho Man. He had been standing, motionless, on the side of the main street. As soon as my mom turned down our road, he started to walk, presumably to follow her. She said the encounter was weird but thought nothing more of it. Why would someone be out in the pouring rain, down a back road in the afternoon? It was like he was waiting for something. I started to panic as well. My mom called my aunt, the two are like best friends, and asked what she should do. My aunt told her to call the police immediately. And so we did. We proceeded to pace around the bedroom, frantically looking out the windows to see if we could see Poncho Man. From where the bedroom was angled, it was impossible to look at the front porch and see if he was still there, but we were desperate for anything. After what felt like hours, we finally saw a police cat pull up. We carefully unlocked the door and went down to let the officer in. We explained what we saw, and he agreed to do a scan around the neighborhood. As he left, I noticed there was something on the doorknob. I took it off, and it was a political ad for a candidate that was running for office. It's possible Poncho Man was just campaigning for the candidate, but there are a lot of holes in that story. It was pouring out, so why would you go door to door? And why would you go that route in such a rural neighborhood? The houses are so far apart, you'd barely make a dent on foot. The time doesn't make sense either. Sure, I and my mom were home, but it was about 4 in the afternoon. Most people would still be at work, so you'd probably get no response from knocking anyway. Eventually, the officer returned. He had found the guy down the road, and had questioned him. Poncho Man was able to ID himself, and he claimed that he was a political campaigner and was just knocking on doors for that reason. When probed further, conveniently enough, Poncho Man couldn't provide any other door signs, as the one he had left on our house was the last one. That makes the campaign story even more absurd. Our house is in the middle of the street. It's not like we were the last by any means, so why wouldn't you bring enough for the whole street? Even the officer pointed this out to us and said that it was unusual behavior. Although the officer was suspicious of him, there wasn't anything he could do about it, as there was no way to prove intent. He told us to be alert and do not hesitate to call if Poncho Man returns. Fast forward a few weeks, and I start noticing that a police car seems to be permanently stationed down the road from us, about a 3-minute drive. I got curious and asked my mom about it, and she said that there were multiple break-ins into the houses down the road, and the police were doing a sort of sting operation. The Poncho Man encounter and the break-ins may be unrelated, but considering how Poncho Man acted, I have a sinking feeling that they are connected. Thankfully, for the past few months, we've heard and seen nothing of Poncho Man. We got a new doorbell system with a camera, and the police left the area where they were doing the sting. I hope that this whole situation is over and done with and that I never have to meet Poncho Man.